Hey there, welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to learn about another dynamics effect called limiters. A limiter is a type of dynamic processor. Remember, we mentioned in our previous tutorial that the four types of dynamics processors are compressors, expanders, limiters, and gates. Dynamics processors adjust the volume of a signal. In this video, we'll be learning what a limiter is, when to use it, and how to work the controls on a software limiter. A limiter keeps your signal from going above a certain decibel value that you set. Technically, it prevents the wave from going above a certain amplitude. While a compressor reduces the overall dynamic range of the music, a limiter affects only the highest peaks so that the next stop in the signal path doesn't get overloaded. To act on those peaks, limiters have a very fast attack time, 1 microsecond to 1 millisecond. The compression ratio in a limiter is very high, 10 to 1 or greater, which means that when the level crosses the threshold, the volume is reduced by 10 times or more, depending on the ratio. And as you've probably inferred, the threshold is set very high, like 0 decibels or close to that. If you limit the input signal you're recording by inserting a limiter between the microphone and your audio interface, it can prevent overloading of your audio interface. A limiter is actually really great for me, especially when I'm singing opera and miking up close, because the high notes can come suddenly and they really blast hot, even if I pull away from the mic quite a bit. Sometimes pulling away too much makes the sound too distant, so that's why a limiter is quite helpful for me. Limiters on your input signal can also be used to prevent recorder overload while you're doing live recording or prevent PA power amps from clipping. You can use limiting on your final mix to reduce any peaks caused by volume and EQ boosts. You can set the threshold about 6 decibels below the highest peak level. Then you'd normalize, which raises the level of the signal until the highest peak reaches the maximum level. As you see, limiting and normalizing together can create a louder sound on your final output without compressing the dynamics if that's an issue for you. Now let's take a look at one of Cubase's limiter plugins. So the principal controls on a limiter are similar across software and hardware models. We use the input knob to boost the gain in order to make up for the reduction in volume that happens when you limit. The output knob determines the maximum output level. Anything above this level will be affected by the plugin. The release knob sets the amount of time that it takes for the gain to return to its original level. There's also an auto button down here. It lets the plugin find an optimal release setting that varies depending on the audio material. These are separate meters for the input, output, and the amount of limiting. The amount of limiting is shown in the middle meter. Let's take a look at some of the presets to see what they offer us. There's some vocal settings, instrument settings, percussion settings. Ooh, Kill the Transients, I love this name. Let's see what else we've got here. Mastering for jazz, mastering light peak limiting, more kick punch, some settings for guitar, pop piano, etc. Okay, let's stick with Kill the Transients and load it in. Our input gain is 9.6. That means we're going to be boosting by 9.6 decibels. And our threshold is actually pretty low at -6.2. The release time is slow enough so that we won't cut off any final consonants. And this concludes our overview of working with a limiter.